Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode 54. Tonight, we are covering a very fun topic. We are covering documentaries and films of pro wrestling. I thought this was a really interesting topic we can cover. It's something we haven't covered before. There's a lot of media out there for pro wrestling, not only just promotions in general, but also just movies and films. Obviously, with Iron Claw just coming out in December, there are a lot of movies, docs, and TV shows about pro wrestling. So we'll be discussing a lot of that tonight. First and foremost, let me introduce you guys to our guest tonight. First and foremost, welcome everybody. One of our newest members. He's a man that knows everything. He's like me. He's got a history of pro wrestling. Mr. Jay Brandon, how you doing? Can you hear me, Brandon?
I don't know everything, but I know enough to be dangerous anyway.
Hey man, I mean, between you and I, we probably know a lot of history with pro wrestling. So I mean, it'll probably be good back and forth. And
Have
also,
you seen Iron Claw yet? It was a pretty good movie in my opinion.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I honestly would love to watch it again. I've already watched it like 3 times. So I'm probably going to watch it again and again and again. But also joining us tonight, one of our favorite people. He's our favorite producer. Without him, this show and actually all our stuff would not be possible. He's one of our favorite people in the crew, and he's kind of like the godfather to us, Mr. Connor Hayes.
Yeah, this should be a really good episode. We haven't talked about Iron Claw and a lot of the stuff before ever on this podcast, so it's going to be really fun and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was super exciting. This was kind of like a last minute thing that came to my head because I was watching. Oh, what was I watching the other day? I was watching. God, it was a series. It was a documentary series. It was about. It was David Arquette. It was You Can't Kill David Arquette. So I'm like, dude, we need to cover documentaries and films about pro wrestling because a lot of that is not talked about. And it's also funny that a lot of pro wrestlers had actually been featured not only in movies about pro wrestling, but just in general, any genre of movie. There's been wrestlers that have been actors. And I guess, Connor, for you, can you recall the first pro wrestler you ever saw in a movie?
Oh, wow. Probably Hulk Hogan. Probably other than Hulk Hogan. It'd have to be probably the nanny that he was in. Either that one or maybe John Cena with the Marines, but I'm gonna say probably Hulk Hogan.
And it's sad that you had a mention the which movie I think are you thinking Suburban Commando?
John Cena.
No, Hulk Hogan.
There was one. It was like a surfing movie, and then but I feel like the main one that I remember, the first one I ever saw, was where Hulk Hogan was the nanny of the house, and the kids tortured him to death.
Yeah, I think was that called The Nanny? I don't know. If anybody can remember in the comments, comment below. I think it was called The Nanny. I don't know. But Jay, Brandon, do you remember the first movie you ever saw that had a pro wrestler in it as like an actor way before, Rock and John Cena took Hollywood?
It's probably going to have to be Hulk Hogan for me as well because Rocky 3 is what comes to mind as a child. Roddy Piper had a couple of things shortly thereafter, but Hulk Hogan and Rocky 3 is what I remember first.
Yeah, we talk about Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper, famous for the classic horror sci-fi movie They Live. I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum. But yeah, no, I think the first time I remember seeing a pro wrestler in a movie was They Live with Roddy Piper because I'm a huge horror fan. So, and it's funny because one of my favorite web series on YouTube is called Dead Meat. And one of the series he used to do was called What's Your Favorite Scary Movie? And he would bring on pro wrestlers because the pro wrestling world and horror movies kind of are almost coincide. I mean, but I think it's really fun that we can coincide different medias and different pop culture things with pro wrestling and other stuff. And joining us, our favorite Canadian from AEZ Canada. She's our favorite Twitch streamer. She's the lovely Siren. Siren, welcome.
I'm so sorry. I've been having like technical difficulties and I haven't been able to get anything to work, but I'm here now.
It's okay, Siren. So, Siren, I asked Jay and Connor a question about what was the first piece of media you actually saw, like a pro wrestler like acting, like not, it doesn't have to be documentary or like a wrestling movie, but just as acting.
Oh gosh. What was that really horrible Kane movie?
Oh yeah.
See No Evil.
Yeah.
That was probably it. And I was a horror movie fanatic when I was a kid. And so like I kind of gobbled up all of that kind of content. And yeah, I just remember being like, but it was really bad, but it was good in a bad way. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first thing that I saw like outside of wrestling. And then probably I like The Rock. I didn't see much after that. There was a couple like little appearances that people made, but I'd have to really think about it. Like cameos and stuff. Wrestlers used to do a lot of cameos back in the day. Yeah, I'd really have to think about that. Sorry about that.
No, you're right. And it was television too. I mean, we got to think about the pop culture world of WWF and all those wrestlers on the shows were making guest appearances either on SNL or TV shows like Miami Vice, like Home Married with Children had some of the girls from Glow on the show. Like they were all over the place. And then it kind of just grew to where like, hey, pro wrestling's now part of our pop culture. Let's cover it in more like films and, documentaries and TV series. Yeah. I actually want to get your guys' take on it right now. We'll dive right into it because we're going to start off tonight with documentaries because there's been so many of them. There's been so many good ones. We'll go round table here tonight, going in a circle starting this way. So I'll start with Brandon, go Connor, and then Siren. We'll do 2 documentaries, one at a time. You'll give your first one, then the next person, and then we'll give her a second one the second time around. So Brandon, why don't you go ahead? What is one documentary, pro wrestling documentary, that stood out to you, and what did you take away from it?
Well, we started off with the Iron Claw, so I will go back to the tragedy and triumph of World Class Championship Wrestling. I have watched that so many times. Growing up in Martinsville, Virginia, Saturday was wrestling day, man. It started at 9:00 in the morning and went all the way to 4. We got a break and started back up, of course, at 6:05. So we got a lot of different territories. And World Class was always one of my favorites. And everything that promotion went through with the tragedies of not only the Von Erichs, but Gino Hernandez. Chris Abs, he lasted a little bit longer. He actually made a couple of appearances in different places. But that's one that I have watched so many times, trying to go back and see where, just anything they could have done different. One thing that could have prevented some of that stuff. He left us. Where'd he go?
Oh, wait. I should some of his comments.
Okay. I got you. If we're going on a second one, I think I told you guys last time I was on here, I met Roddy Piper when I was a 8-year-old child. Oh, wow. And he was so nice. He was supposed to be the biggest asshole on TV, I guess, if you want to say, back when kayfabe was still the thing, feuding with Wahoo McDaniel over the U.S. title. And I walked into the dressing room scared to death to meet him. And he was so nice. And so the other one that stuck out for me was after he passed, when they put out, Born to Controversy, the Roddy Piper story. I spent a fortune on those DVDs when they were putting them out. I got 3 shelves full of them over here. Just about every one they put out, when it was a documentary type thing, I got. So those are the 2 that stick out for me. Those are probably my 2 favorites.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like that. I saw that one too, the Roddy Piper one. I apologize. I had to step out to use the restroom real quick, but drinking lots of water. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so I remember the Roddy Piper documentary. I actually just recently watched that one. And especially the glory days of the territorial wrestling and all that stuff. So those are actually 2 great picks for you. But Connor, what would you say your first documentary is?
No, I can still remember the first wrestling documentary I've ever watched. I can still remember it. Beyond the Mat. It was a VHS that it was about the It was this guy. I don't know what the guy's name was, but he went from like going to an independent promotion, then going to ECW, then went to the WWF, and then followed all these guys' careers. And it was really because like when I saw this, I was about 6 or 7. So I think all this is like legit real. So I see Terry Funk and one of them busted all open, and then I asked my dad one time, could he teach me how to wrestle? Because he's the one who got me to watch it, and he said he was a wrestler. He wasn't really a wrestler, but that's the very first documentary I remember watching. Beyond the Mat. I actually still have that VHS to this day. And besides Beyond the Mat, I would probably have to say this is a wild one. But growing up as a kid, I would always watch the documentary of Jeff Hardy. Or I'll say the Hardy Boys together, really. I would watch the one that WWE put out, their childhood backyard wrestling, going into when they used to King Mabel. He would come out in the thing, and the Hardys were the ones carrying him. King Mabel on like the throne or whatever. He won the King of the Ring, and they would be carrying him, the Hardys, and them throughout their careers. So for me, it's Beyond the Mat and the Hardy Boys documentaries.
I think one of the hardest things to take away from that Beyond the Mat documentary for me when I first saw it, I think it was just the reaction to Mick Foley's kids when he had that match with The Rock and the constant chair shots. And it was funny because before the match, they got to go backstage and meet all the wrestlers. So they, especially with kids of pro wrestlers today, like they grew up in it and everything like that. So they're used to meeting the guys back and the girls backstage. So this was just hardening because, they met The Rock and he was so nice to him. And then he comes out because he's the heel and he's bashing the chair and the kids are crying. And so like that just stuck with me. I'm like, oh man, that's just heartbreaking. But it was what it was. And in the end, Mick so good with his kids saying, no, it's fine. Daddy's fine. It's all part of the show. We're good. Him and I are buddies. So I think that's a big takeaway from Beyond the Mat. I actually haven't got to watch the Jeff Hardy documentary yet. I got to get around to that. I'm trying to catch up on all my documentaries. It's so hard to kind of binge watch them. But actually, 2 really good picks there, Connor. Siren, what are some documentaries that kind of stuck out to you?
Beyond the Mat was actually one of the only like documentaries that I've watched. But I tend to do dives. So when I was growing up, I went to a lot of like house shows. We went to a lot of live wrestling because my brothers were fans, my parents were fans, and so when I was like little, like Chris Benoit we were front row, like right by the ring, and Chris Benoit kept landing in my dad's lap over and over and over again, right? And so my dad was like, tag me in, and like, so this is like one of like a core thing, right? And so after everything happened and whatnot, I kind of went on like a tear and a deep dive into that. So I found some really amazing podcasts, and I'm actually gonna I'll post the link on one of our pages because I can't find it right now. That was part of my technical difficulty today. And the 2-part Dark Side of the Ring episode on it. But like there was a podcast on it that delved into like so many different facets of that whole time period. It wasn't just like the events, but it was his whole career and everything surrounding it. And I loved that it wasn't just like focused on the events. So I would say I'll find the podcast for you, but it's a whole Chris Benoit documentary from the start to finish of his career, and I believe it delves into a little bit of his son wanting to wrestle. But I'll find it. It was on Spotify. But yeah, and other than that, yeah, you took my Beyond the Mat. It was pretty much the only actual documentary that I've ever seen for wrestling, which I have a whole list now because I'm like, I didn't know they made that. know they made that. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think how much afterwards of the tragedy of Chris Benoit's story is covered in documentaries, and it's so controversial. Even as his son now, David, is trying to make his own name for himself, not only in pro wrestling, just as himself, because it's very hard to see David Benoit, and most people are like, "Oh, your father was evil. Your father was this." When realistically, David knew his father more than anybody and knew that there was something wrong. So it's very weird to see these documentaries about Chris Benoit. I mean, we've already had a 2-part episode of Dark Side of the Ring. We've had a lot of like news coverage, like a lot of like smaller, like on news channels, they covered it, a year or two after it. But, do you guys think with so many of these documentaries, with covering some of these controversies, do you think that's too much, or do you think that's what audiences want to know? Do you think that's too much diving into these personal lives, Brandon?
I miss the days of kayfabe for a lot of different reasons. One of the things about today's wrestling that really brings me down sometimes when I'm trying to watch it is not the fact that we don't know it's scripted. That's fine. It's just that, believability aspect that's gone. And, but once the curtains opened up, then no. Now, if they'd have never come out and admitted, what they've admitted and then went to do what they did, no. I mean, but it's opened up a lot of doors for people. You get behind the scenes, you get to see the actual person instead of just the character. And as far as dark as some of it has been, there's been a lot of light to it as well, to see the actual person that, could come across as, the biggest jerk on TV, but, the best husband and father you could possibly ask for. So it's a two-way street for me. Once they open the curtain, I have no issue with it going as long as, it was helping some of the guys stay relevant. It allows you, the younger fans, that didn't see these guys come up, be able to see some of the stuff that we talk about and see how believable they were at the time and how they came across. So no, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, Connor, to you on that matter, like I said, do you believe, I know this is kind of crazy question. I just talked about controversial documentaries about controversial people, but do you believe the saying, controversial creates cash?
Definitely. Edge and Matt Hardy. Controversy probably was that was a storyline that invested a lot of people into, and it was real life stuff. And that had to create a lot of cash for them, because they did that story for a while, and it seemed that the longer they were going, the more people were invested in it. There's so many stories in wrestling that has been real life stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The main
Most
one
recently, we've had Ortiz and Santana. Most recently.
Yeah, Santana and Ortiz, we have that. There's some other. Well, I guess it kind of could be, but it didn't really create cash because, Hulk Hogan. Well, the Bash of the Beach 2000. That probably could have made a lot of money if they went with it, but they didn't really end the way they would have thought it would. But yeah, I think the story, like if people know that it's real heat and these guys don't like each other, and a feud like Matt Hardy and Edge, it was real heat, and the matches they had were really, really good. So yes, I do believe controversy creates cash.
It's a good book, by the way. You should read it.
I was gonna say before I go to Siren, Brandon, you showed up someone that is very controversial, someone who basically changed the face of pro wrestling in the '90s with the Monday Night Wars against Vince, and that's Eric Bischoff. So I mean, it is insane how much cash that man brings in, and he hasn't been seen on a promotion in years.
Well,
and yet he still brings in the cash. He still brings in the controversy. I would say him and Jim Cornette. They bring in the controversial stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't dislike either one of them. I'll listen to them from time to time, but they do bring that controversial, and they do make the cash out of it with their podcast, with their talking points. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I'll tell you, I've done a complete 180 on Bischoff. I could not stand him in the 90s. I mean, I saw him when he started in the AWA. He says I was a C announcer. No, you weren't even that good, bro. But and then the NWO thing and then his own character TV that he came across as, and that's I enjoy his podcast because for all the slack and the clickbait that you get with headlines of Eric Bischoff said XYZ about Tony Khan and AEW, he's always complimenting them. And when he's yelling on his podcast about Tony, what he's screaming about, he's like, dude, I've made these same mistakes. Stop, learn from my mistakes. And his podcast, I really do. I enjoy his podcast. I laugh at Cornette. Cornette's just hysterical to me. As long as you take it with a grain of salt and don't sit there and try to argue with him, because he's got his points. And if you listen to him in depth, you can see what he's trying to do. Even Jeff Jarrett brought it up. He's like, God, when Jeff Jarrett won the that Texas Chainsaw belt, and I was listening to Jarrett's podcast, and Conrad Thompson asked him, so did you hear what Cornette had to say? He goes, oh Lord, what Corny had to say? I'm sure it wasn't anything good. And so he told him a couple of Cornette's lines, and he laughed. He said, some of the younger guys won't understand this and they get mad at Jim. He said, but I'll tell you what, he goes, he's got a hell of a fan base. And he goes, if Jim says he likes something, his fans are going to go watch. He said, and if he hates something, his fans are going to go watch it even more. He said, it's the Howard Stern effect. I know exactly what Corny's doing. Corny, keep it up. Get the eyes on the product. I appreciate you. Next subject. And but as far as Eric Bischoff goes, I mean, his podcast is, I wouldn't say he's as entertaining as Cornette. His is actually pretty informational. He discusses in depth when he actually, says something bad, or I won't say bad, but critiques something that AEW is doing or something that Tony's doing. He comes back and explains the mistakes that he has made in that same scenario. And if Tony was such a fan of the 90s as he claims to be, that he would know those mistakes inside and out that he made and not make the same ones, because he wants AEW to thrive and survive.
Right. I don't think any pro wrestling podcaster or, person who's been in the business for so long, someone like a Bischoff or Cornette, wants to see a promotion die off. They want these people, these men and women, to have jobs in the pro wrestling industry. They don't want anything to go away. But I honestly, I love the idea that people can have their own opinion on everything without arguing, without bickering, because I think that's what's going on in pro wrestling world fandom today, is that, again, we bring the word up, tribalism comes up constantly, and we try to get rid of it. And it's very hard. So when you've got certain fan bases bickering each other, can't get, together. But for me, I think we talked about for documentaries, I'm going to finish up with my documentaries. One documentary I can bring up is You Can't Kill David Arquette. For those who don't know, David Arquette was a stain on pro wrestling back in the 2000s. People said he's the one that killed WCW and pro wrestling in general when he won the world heavyweight title in WCW. Well, if people watch this documentary, that actually stuck with David for a long time. He's a big pro wrestling fan. He loves the thing. He loves the entertainment. He loves
it. Hurts his feelings.
He actually got back into shape, and he wanted to pretty much right the wrongs he did in pro wrestling. And he goes on this journey of trying to get into the sport really, like, honestly do it the right way, and getting his feet dirty and taking his licks, paying his dues. Like,
getting his throat cut to Nick Gage.
Oh, yeah.
That was ridiculous.
So, and honestly, he's done the backyard stuff. And then he actually went to Mexico and did the Lucha Libre. And if anybody knows about Lucha Libre with the masks, you have to earn those masks. They're not given to you. You have to earn them. Well, David Arquette did a show with the Lucha Libres. He spent a couple days with them, and then they had a show in like a little gym. And he actually did so well that after the show, they gifted him a Lucha Libre mask. That's how much respect he got doing that training. Obviously, he had matches with RJ City, and, then he went and wrestled Nick Gage, had that moment where he got his throat cut where he almost died. But, it just shows to someone that, hey, you're an outsider, but if you pay your dues and do the work, maybe we'll show you some respect. And then the second documentary I actually want to bring up, we haven't talked about it yet, is Glow, The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which was basically the first all-female wrestling show, but they were all actresses. but they were trained by Mando Guerrero of the famed Guerrero family. And I love the story of that company. And you don't see a lot of female documentaries about female wrestlers or promotions. Siren, do you think there's favoritism more towards male wrestlers getting more documentaries and shows and movies over female wrestlers?
Yeah, but and this is not to knock any ladies that have ever been in professional wrestling. It's they don't get pushed as hard a lot of the time. They don't have the big epic moments, like, and that's not by any fault of their own. Like, a lot of these documentaries are it's because people have made these insane careers, and how many women can you think of that like have had these absolutely blow up bombshell careers? There's infinitely less because there's infinitely less female wrestlers. You know what I mean? So like, yes and no. I really do believe that there is a lot more interesting female wrestlers that we could get documentaries on, and that's unfair that we don't have them. But like, for the amount of numbers, like how many wrestlers have you seen, male wrestlers even, to how many documentaries you have about male wrestlers? Like, every wrestler doesn't get a documentary, but yes, I do believe that there's unfair representation. I just also feel like we didn't really have as many top tier female wrestlers as we do now. Like, they weren't focused on female wrestling back then. It wasn't wrestling, it was bras and panties matches and judging each other's bodies and pulling each other's hair and who can step into the ring the nicest. Like, they didn't let's make a documentary about that. Like, I don't know. But yeah, like, I feel like definite unfair representation for sure. But there's always been unfair representation of females in wrestling. So
right. And Brandon, I'll go with you in this one because you and I both, before when the show started, we talked about classic wrestling, but we can go back even before the age of bra and panties matches, nightgown matches. There were still women wrestlers, but they were more on display as like a special attraction. Do you feel that's kind of evolved?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you had the ladies, main event WrestleMania one year. I mean, and, to Siren, I'm hopeful about it because I'll tell you, in 15 or 20 years, when a lot of these ladies have retired, your Bayley, your Sasha Banks, your Charlotte Flairs, that are Rhea Ripley's that are on top of the world right now and getting this push, you're going to get a, influx of lady documentaries coming in because they're finally, they're at the top of their game right now.
Exactly. And I feel that. And it's kind of the point that I was trying to make is like, we didn't really have that many women on top, like, so to speak, back in the day.
We had, Moogle's very controversial depending on who you talk to. Everybody seemed to love Mae Young. Mm-hmm. But again, you go back and, the main women's match I remember from being a kid was, Medusa Michelli, who became Alundra Blaze, and Sherry Martel on AWA, Sensational Sherry. And those ladies, if you didn't ever see it, if you want to go back and watch some old AWA, could go. I mean, they could legit go. And when they brought Sherry Martel into the WWE, and they gave her a couple of different gimmicks before Sensational Sherry, but they were having her as a valet. I would be being young going, what are you doing with her? She can wrestle. And, her and Medusa beat the shit out of each other on AWA TV. And
we actually talked about this in our last Talking Elite, was it not? About feuds and whatnot. 98% of the women's feuds, Brandon, like the most historical best women's feuds, Medusa was involved. Mm-hmm. Oh, like, so you brought her up. She was in everything that I was researching.
And so they'll tell you to this day she's still a legit badass, and most of the guys would want to try her.
Yeah, no, that's what I've been reading for sure. I've been actually meaning to deep dive into a little bit of her older stuff because she was coming up in everything that I was reading about the older female wrestlers and best female wrestling feuds of all time.
Yeah, very, very tough, very smart, very savvy business lady. She's still doing her thing now, and good kudos to her.
Heck yeah.
No, absolutely. And before we move on, we're gonna sum up this documentary portion of the show. We covered all this stuff about documentaries like, The Glow, The Dark Side of the Ring. Beyond the Mat's been a very popular one, I guess, with a lot of people. But if there's one documentary about one wrestler that hasn't even been created yet, who's the one wrestler you want to see a documentary on that hasn't had a documentary on anything? Connor, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Brandon and Siren.
For me, it would probably be, I don't know if this person does or doesn't, but the Dynamite Kid. Actually, I'd like to see, actually, Adam shared that in our group page, that they're working on a movie for the Hart family. I know he's not part of the Hart family, but D.H. Smith, but personally, I'll see I believe Dark Side Rings done a documentary on Dynamite Kid, but maybe like I don't know, maybe something more like the way WWE does it. Because WWE has a way of getting a lot more, I don't know, a lot more different names into documentaries. But for me, probably Dynamite Kid or Owen Hart, like a full-on Owen Hart documentary. But yeah, Dynamite Kid for me.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm actually researching that now to see if Dark Side of the Ring had something on the Dynamite Kid. Let me see here. So far, I don't think they have. Yeah, it doesn't look like they have yet. So, oh no, they did. It was in season 3. They have done it, but I understand where you're coming from of getting like more of a full story, not just like a 45-minute to an hour episode on TV. More depth of the Dynamite Kid and all that stuff. Really good pick. Brandon, who's one wrestler that you would love to see have a documentary made about them?
I'll go back to somebody I talked about the last time I was on here, and that'd be Tully Blanchard. There's a lot of good stuff from Tully, from and his father with Southeast Championship Wrestling in Texas, where him and Gino Hernandez were the tag team champions at one point. But the only time in Gino's career, I think he went babyface for about 3 weeks. But Tully had a very interesting career, coming up as a second generation star, son of a promoter, and then moving into the Crockett and having all that success with the Four Horsemen. The fallout with Crockett and then the move to the WWF, the positive cocaine test on his way back into Crockett. And then, basically they told him no thanks, but no thanks, and cut Arn's money in half because they said he was more valuable as a tag team than a single. And then Tully's redemption story, becoming a pastor, going around talking to inmates, doing his thing, and eventually working his way back into the business a little bit. I'd like to see some of that behind the scenes stuff on Tully Blanchard.
Yeah, no, I love the whole story behind majority of the Four Horsemen. I mean, you got tons of Ric Flair stuff. You don't got a lot of Arn Anderson or Tully Blanchard in there. But I honestly would love to see more, especially with the Blanchard family. There's a whole history of Tully's family in there that I would love to see a deep dive into.
And not, we talked about him before, but if there was another one out there that I would say I'd like to see, would just be the, it's cliche to say because they've said it about so many things, but basically the rise and fall and rise again of Lex Luger.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to see one on him too, because that's a great story from being, brought in and with a silver spoon in your mouth because of the way you look, and falling way down from grace. And I haven't met the man, but everybody that has met him has told me what a positive person he is, and just he's a joy to be around. And I would like to see that story as well.
Right. Well, Siren, final for you. Who's one wrestler you would love to see a documentary on?
So I was gonna say Sable, but they did one in 1999 apparently. Although she did come back and do some more stuff with WWE and then New Japan. So, but yeah, originally it was gonna be Sable, but apparently they did that. I would like to see something cover Saraya, and I know that they've already done the fighting with my family and whatnot. But like with the whole controversy with WWE and her Twitch streaming and her personal videos being shared and the overcoming and reinvention of herself getting back into the world in the public eye. Because after everything that happened to her, physically and mentally, I feel like it would be a really wicked story. And I would really love to see how somebody overcomes something like that was so personal and so public, you know? And to me, I mean, as somebody who definitely does everything in the public now, I would just love to hear about how she handled all of that and the issues with WWE essentially saying, well, you can't work, but you also can't work for yourself, and how she got around all that and whatnot. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, a lot of good ideas. For me, I honestly would love to see, because I'm a big fan, and I think they'll get it out there eventually once he's done. But Adam Copeland, I'm a big Edgehead, always has been since his debut. I think a documentary on him, his fall from WWE after the neck injury, and then his big return after they said he was pretty much done. I would love to see a documentary on that, his home life, you know, all the controversy that followed him. Like Connor said, with the Matt Hardy Edge story with Lita, you know, moving on to being Beth Phoenix and their kids and kind of redeeming himself as like a personal person. I like to see that. So moving on from docs, before we move on, let's get to some of the comments. I know we showed one of them, but let's get to some of them as we ask people about it. Ethan, thank you for joining us. Kane would win. I think Kingslayer asked who would win between Damian Priest and Kane. Ethan said Kane, especially Demon Kane. Early Demon Kane would be great. Roddy Piper, as Brandon was mentioning, that documentary was really good. Ethan, Beyond the Mat, again, another documentary that's basically a lot of people are aware of. Always enjoyed Beyond the Mat. It's amazing to see so many people still remember that documentary. It is crazy because it came out in 99? So it's well over 25 years now, 25 years old.
It's been a minute.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up the number. Sorry. Jacob says, hey, Brandon, nice to see you on here.
What's up, man? How you doing?
And then Kingslayer, all that, Tully. Yeah, no, great. Thank you guys for all commenting. We do appreciate you guys watching, subscribing, liking, sharing with everybody. We do enjoy doing these shows for you guys. It's great to dive into, you know, movies and pro wrestling media. So now we're going to move on to something I'm looking forward to is just movies, wrestling movies. And it could be absurd. It could be Oscar worthy, like what I have in the back here, The Wrestler. But I want you guys to give me one movie. I mean, there's a few out there. I've got one that's absurd that all of you are going to go, what? But I'm going to start with Brandon. What's one movie that's basically the subplot that's pro wrestling that you thoroughly enjoyed?
I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up. But it was Roddy Piper basically playing himself just under a different name. And I want to say his tag team partner was the Tonga Kid, maybe. And I cannot remember the name of the movie. But I mean, it was cheesy. It was in the 80s. You know, it was after They Live. It was when Piper had taken his hiatus, and but it strikes me. I cannot. I can't remember.
Well, this is the greatest thing about. But
while you're looking though, being you have the wrestler in the background.
Yes.
I used to have a buddy of mine that sold bootleg DVDs, and I bought The Wrestler and Notorious from him on the same day. And, you know, I was a single dad, went home, fixed dinner, put the kids to bed, went there, and I'm sitting in my bedroom watching. First one I put on was The Wrestler. And my 7 or 8 year old daughter at the time, however old she was, decides to pop in the bedroom at the time of the movie when he's got that girl in the bathroom just going at it. And I'm like, oh, what do you want? And so go put her back to bed, put in Notorious, start watching Notorious because I was not tired. She pops in my room about the time that Notorious B.I.G. and Little Kim are going at it. And she's like, oh my God, Dad, what are you watching? I'm like, why are you still awake?
I think your movie was called Body Slam.
Yes,
That's
that
what I
is
was
it.
about to say. Yep.
Yeah.
Something easy to remember. Cheesy and in the 80s, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the Tonga Kid that played his tag team partner.
It was. And it also starred Dirk Benedict from Battlestar Galactica, the original.
Yep, he was the promoter.
I am such a nerd. I am
Yep, he
such
was
a
the
nerd when it
promoter.
comes to that.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Man, that's classic right there. Connor, what's one of your favorite movies based on pro wrestling?
So movies about pro wrestling, or
Well, what's your favorite? Like, which one did you enjoy the most? You know?
well, this one's not. It kind of is wrestling related, but anyone seen Boy Meets World? They had WCW in there, and you know, then Mr. Prom. Everyone knows Corey and Topanga. So their dance thing was in the WCW ring, and one of the characters there, I don't know if that was actually his dad. I don't think it was, but his dad was Vader. So they got to go see the match, and Vader, I guess, hooked him up with it. I don't know. I always liked that, but another one, Fighting with My Family. I really like that one with Saraya. It really shows the really hardship of being a wrestler. It's not what you really think it is until you really get involved in it. It's not what you think it is. But yeah, those two for me were really good. Mainly Boy Meets World. I really liked that one.
I never saw that, but I did hear about it and saw like very, very small clippets of it, but I never saw that when I did it.
And that goes back to our beginning discussion of how we see pro wrestling intermingle with other media outlets and TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just crazy where you see an episode of Boy Meets World and it's like, isn't that Big Bad Vader in the ring with that? That's just weird. What is going on? Why is Vader at the prom? And
one of the best part about the 90s.
And it's just so fun to see those kind of different media outlets just combined to one, and it's just so fun and entertaining. And I enjoyed Fighting with My Family as well. Connor, go ahead.
He appeared on another thing too, because one of the characters was his dad. I don't know if that was actually his dad, but he was in another one where it was 2-on-1. They got into a fight with Vader's son was a bully in school, so he challenged Corey and Tom to 2-on-1, and they were going against Vader. It was really funny, I thought.
That is, I gotta go look for that episode now. Siren, what's one pro wrestling movie that you thoroughly enjoyed that you just would watch over and over again?
We were talking about David Arquette earlier, so I'm going to say Ready to Rumble. Has anybody seen it? It's phenomenal. It was hilarious. I died a little. I cried a little. It was good. But I watch that probably annually. That's right up there. Yeah, I will rule you. Oh my gosh. I have to say, as
Jimmy
like.
The King.
I'm gonna say it as a young adult after I had graduated high school, participating in adult activities. I may have said that once. I may have, and it was perfect. And the reaction was perfect. But yeah, no, like I mean, that's one that I definitely put up there with like annual watches. Like that's up there with like my Biodome and my Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Like I'm gonna watch that every year. Galaxy Quest, like. That's in that list for sure. And it's the only one on that list that has anything to do with wrestling. And then Heels. Did anybody watch Heels? That was a show, but it was phenomenal and it got canceled. And it was seriously the best CM Punk that I ever saw, although his wife wrestles better than he does.
I was very upset the way they ended it when it got canceled. I'm hoping they find a home for that, so at least give us a season to where they can wrap it up.
Please, like, because yeah, I was like, this is so not fair. Like, I am so involved in that show, and I hate that. I knew the moment that I fell in love with it, though, that they were gonna cancel it. It's my luck. I'm like, I started watching it. I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry to my partner King, who was watching it with me. And he goes, why? And I'm like, I love it. And he goes, yeah, what's the problem with that? I was like, they're gonna cancel it. It's never gonna get finished. That's what happens. What happens to the things I love.
They live. I got the Roddy Piper They Live figure back here on one of these shelves.
Really? That's so awesome. He's in a ton of movies. But yeah, those are my two. I would say
I love that you brought up Ready to Rumble, because it's become such a cult film, along with those other titles you just went off with Galaxy Quest. That one for me, Galaxy Quest, is in that league of underrated movies from that era, and I love it. And that is the best figurine I've ever seen, Brandon.
Oh, that's the glasses too. It's got Roddy Piper on each side.
Yeah.
Oh,
I need to start doing my collection of figurines for my man cave when my lady and I get a house.
That's what I'm doing in here, but I've got some crates behind me that are full and some other stuff that I'm putting shelves around all the way the top of the room so I can finish.
I'm glad that Ready to Rumble is a cult.
But I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad Ready to Rumble was in there. I'm going to bring up two movies, because both movies, the first one you guys already know is going to be The Wrestler. There's a reason why I made it this way. It just, when it came out, we were already in that PG kind of era of WWE, and you kind of saw in the movie, they kind of opened up the curtain a little bit of what it was like to be this past their prime kind of pro wrestlers, still doing the tours and everything, still doing the autographs, and still trying to make it by, and so I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I really thought it was kind of on par with Beyond the Mat, almost on par with that documentary, because it opened up the curtain and showed you the business behind the scenes. And so that's my first one. But the second one, you guys are going to go, what the hell is that movie? It is actually called Monster Brawl. It came out in 2011. Okay. And even the listeners and viewers are like, what the hell? But listen to this. It was a movie, a horror movie, but it was based on monsters fighting each other in a wrestling room.
Oh my God.
And so when it came out, it had like Frankenstein, the werewolf, like a swamp monster, a witch, a lady vampire. They were all battling. And you'd be surprised at the cast of who was in this movie, because you had Herb Dean, who at the time was an MMA referee, and he's in the movie. Some of the characters that are in that movie, the werewolf is actually portrayed by one of our favorite people in AEW, who does interviews, RJ City. And then the vampire lady is actually portrayed by someone very popular in TNA, and that's Rosemary. Portrays a character in that movie as well.
I love Courtney Rush.
You also have Jimmy Hart and Kevin Nash.
Jimmy Hart was in it. Kevin Nash was in it.
Yeah.
So it also involved pro wrestlers in the movie. And actually, the Frankenstein character, a lot of people don't know, is portrayed by, I believe his name was Mallet, but he went by Kurrigan in the WWF when they were in the Oddities, the big guy.
Big dude, yeah.
Yeah, so
he
I
also
highly...
came in one of the bars I was DJing at when he was with WWE.
That's so cool.
Guy.
Oh, yeah. But that's one movie that is so like under the radar that people don't know it's like a wrestling movie, but it's a horror wrestling movie, and it's so cheesy and great that I highly recommend people watch it.
I always like seeing them make cameo appearances in different stuff that you don't expect to see them in. Like I had no idea that Kevin Nash was in John Wick. I'm like, hey, it's you.
So dope.
Yeah, no, and so I think movies right now, like I said, we can talk about Iron Claw. That is a phenomenal movie, which I believe should be nominated for Oscars because it is such a good film.
I will tell you, I didn't mind the timeline with that while we're talking about it. The only thing that I wish they would have done differently was at the very end, before they showed the picture of Kevin and his wife and the grandkids and all the kids, was just a little snippet to Chris to acknowledge his existence. You didn't have to put him in the movie, because he wasn't famous like the rest of them. He only wrestled for a very brief time, but just something, a little paragraph to acknowledge Chris existed, and just give him something.
I will admit, yeah, because when I found out about that after, I was already sad watching the film, because when it got announced that it was coming out, I was like, I'm not going to do any research. I'm just going to watch the film, and then I'll look everything up after and see how accurate it was, right? And so when I found out about that after, that they totally omitted an entire brother who didn't just like he just didn't fade into like non-existence. He like actually unalived himself.
Yeah.
Like how does that not fit into the family curse at all? Like how do you not mention that at all? Like at all. So I was already sad from a very, very sad film, and then I was even sadder that they like omitted an entire person. Like that was double sad.
Watching this stuff as long as I have. When I was watching the movie, I was trying my best to enjoy the movie and not nitpick the timeline. Like when Carrie won the title in the movie, they made it out that he went out and hurt his foot that night, and that was like what 3 years down the road after that happened. After he won the title, 3 or 4 years afterwards, something of that nature. It was just so I'm sitting there nitpicking the timeline, but trying to enjoy the movie as well. But like so if they would just gave Chris some kind of something at the end, his picture with a little something underneath. Chris Von Erich, Chris Atkinson also succumbed to the family curse, and
I agree with that, Brandon. Holy,
just a little something.
No, and I agree. I think that's one thing that people miss out on, either documentaries or movies like that, where they omit something just because either A, it didn't fit the time of the movie or documentary, B, it had no significant, minus this should have significant because he was part of the curse of taking his own life. But there's so many factors that go into a lot of omissions from documentaries and movies based on pro wrestling. So, but one thing I always go back to is underrated families that don't have pro wrestling movies on them. Like I said, we just came out with the Iron Claw about the Von Erichs. So my question to you guys, based on famous families, what are some famous families or famous wrestlers that you'd like to see a movie like the Iron Claw kind of style liked? What wrestlers or wrestling families you guys want to see brought to the movie screen next? Brandon?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, if you're looking for something to gain the notoriety of Iron Claw, to me, I mean, you could very easily do a 2.5 hour movie on Ric Flair.
I was going to say the Flairs.
Well, with his career, when David tried to wrestle, Reed being basically deemed as a prodigy, but he had his drug issues, and then of course his unfortunate passing, and then Charlotte picking up for her brother's dream, that could make for a very intriguing movie and story. And Rick going from a wrestler to being Snoop Dogg's compadre and smoking weed everywhere he goes. I mean, that would draw in your general public because everybody, wrestling or not, seems to know who Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are, whether you watch wrestling or not. I would be interested to see something on, again, on the Blanchards. It's a lot of family history there. I'd like to see something on the Guerreros.
That's what
you could also, I mean, depending on how it is, I mean, you could make a movie about Chris Benoit's life. I'm just not sure I could watch it because we all know how it ended. But I think the movie would sell. It's just a society we live in.
And that goes back to the whole controversy. Controversy creates cash. I mean, that's basically what that goes back to. Connor, what about you? What is there a big movie that's based on a wrestler or a family that you'd like to see at the silver screen?
I was gonna say Chris Benoit, but the same. I don't know who we want to watch that. If you're a wrestling fan, and like if it's like an actual, I wouldn't want to see the ending to that. No, I wouldn't want to see that. But also you shared it in our group chat, but our Hart family movie about the family of the Hart family. There's a lot of members, even members that aren't really noticeable, like Stu Hart. There's others that people may not know about that aren't famous, like Bret Hart or Owen Hart or Jim Neidhart. But for me, the one I would most like to see as a family is probably the Hart family, or even a movie about the Guerreros.
Yeah, no, agreed. And that's the funny part is with a Chris Benoit movie, it could be the documentary of him going through these promotions, becoming, addicted to, steroids and doing all this stuff. And then they don't even have to show the end, maybe show him going home the night of his last match. And then that's it. You just fade to black and you just play news clips of what happened the next day. You don't have to show, because they have done that so many times in movies. I mean, think about, just recently, the Iron Claw. they really didn't show any of the brothers' deaths. They implemented it. They kind of implicated it. This is how they died. You notice that,
There's so much controversy about what actually happened, though. That's the thing. Like, how would you end that movie?
So,
go ahead, Brandon.
I would say Carrie's was the closest in that movie that the way they depicted him. They found Mike under the bridge, but they showed him looking for him. They didn't actually, show them finding him or anything like that. But you heard the gunshot, and Carrie was under a tree. So it was the closest they got to showing anything.
Right. Yeah. It's very hard to do a Chris Benoit movie, or
there's people still arguing about what happened still.
Right. For you, Siren, who would you like to see the silver screen family?
With the Guerreros. That was actually one that I've been talking about for a very long time. I've been griping about that for a long time. When the Von Erichs, when the Iron Claw came out, I was like, oh, okay, so we should be seeing this then, right? Like, this should be coming, right? So yeah, I would go with the Guerreros, because there's a ton of history there, and there's so much that you could touch on. So yeah, I think I'll go with the Guerreros.
Yeah, no, I think it's across the board for people all agreeing that the Guerreros is probably in their top two, maybe number one family to see a documentary on. Obviously, I'm with Connor with the Harts. Yes. Good representation of Canadian wrestling and growing up in that kind of family style of the dungeon. You want to see that come to life on the screen. You're like, you hear these these wrestling fans who are fans of the Hart family. They're like, I want to see it on screen, what it was like, the Hart's training in Stu's dungeon and all these other wrestlers coming through that trained in Stu's dungeon. I think it would be really cool to see that on screen. Obviously, like we said, the Guerreros, you have such a history with, the early passing of Eddie, but you'd also get to see his addiction, of cocaine and all that and how it affected his health. I think a wrestler I'd actually like to see a documentary on by itself. And I don't know if they'll have it because it kind of relates to the Harts, but Owen Hart. I would love to see a movie just centered around Owen Hart, kind of like where the Iron Claw centered around Kevin. I'd like to see it more centered around Owen and his, all that situation, and then follow through with Brett and the rest of the family and how that came through. And it was funny today because I had to argue with people not argue, but I had to correct someone on a post when they shared the story about a possible Hart family movie. And someone's like, is Natalia even a Hart? Like, and I had a comment underneath it. I go, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or you're serious, but yes, she is. She's Jim the Anvil Hart's daughter. So she is in the family. Mm-hmm. And so I had to do that. It goes back to the whole people of being trolls online, and I maybe fell into it, but I would totally agree that those families and those wrestlers, I think, should get time on a movie. So let's go to some more of these comments that we have. We have Wrestling Somewhat 90s called Wrestling with Demons. 3-star. Oh, okay. I never watched Charmed, but it was always on TV when I was flipping through, so I didn't know wrestlers.
I did see that episode. Yes, I was a Charm fan. I watched it all the way to the end.
Hey, man, you like what you like.
Hey, there you go. Also, Iron Claw recently, phenomenal. Chavo trained the cast, that's true. And like I said earlier, Mondo Guerrero trained all the girls back in Glow in the 80s. Film featuring a wrestler was Death from Above, featuring Psycho Sid. I'll have to research that one. I don't think I've ever heard that one.
I haven't heard of that one either.
Ghostblade, I know Monster Ball. Yep, there you go. I gave Siren a new wrestling movie to watch with Monster Brawl.
You did.
You could show that movie at like a sleepover and be like, yeah, Monster Brawl, this is fun. Get the pop.
If I had friends, I totally would. We'll do a watch along on stream one day.
On a different note, kind of the same thing though. I keep seeing the Vince McMahon documentary that's supposed to be coming out on Netflix that he has no say over. And if they have not wrapped that up yet after today's news, that's going to be a pretty interesting piece of film they put out.
Yeah, we're actually gonna finish up with that topic today, Brandon, because I hope you guys are okay with that. We're gonna finish up with that when we talk about controversy creates cash. But so Really good movies. The director of the Iron Claw stated on the interview they omitted Chris from the film because time constraints, but also it would have added too much tragedy to an already heartbreak. You know what? I can kind of see where the director says that, where it's like, dude, there's people are already going to be sick and sad through this whole movie already, like even after the first brother's death. Like it's just going to be so heartbreaking. So I kind of see where they're coming from.
No, I get it. Like I said,
I wound up being sadder though.
I just thought, like I said, they didn't have to put him in it. I just thought maybe before the Kevin family picture at the end, just a little, sentence or two about Chris.
Yeah.
Just
and
to
then this
acknowledge him.
one, and then this one says a wrestling movie I want to see isn't on specific bloodline. I want to see a documentary about the more bigger and heavy set wrestlers and how they change. I totally agree. I'm a big guy fan. Like I love big wrestlers. I know we interviewed Eric Redbeard and I asked him about that, about how the dynamics of big guy wrestlers have changed and some of his idols that he looked up to that were bigger guys in the ring. So I would love to see a documentary on big wrestlers because there's
a one-man gang.
One-man gang,
love the one-man gang back in the day.
Earthquake, you had Vader, you had Midian, you had Yokozuna. So you had so many big guys that just I would love to see that on. So again, thank you guys for all commenting, liking, subscribing. Make sure you guys
sharing it up.
We love doing this stuff again, and this is a really fun topic. And so our last one we're going to get to is TV. This can be anything from documentary shows to actual shows that are just based on pro wrestling. We've already mentioned a few of them. So, Brandon, I'll ask a two-part question. What's one show on television that it could be canceled, like we said, Heels, but what's one show on television about pro wrestling that is just so good it you can't turn it off? And what's a series you'd like to see on television?
I mean, only one I can really think of again is Heels because the season. But I couldn't wait for the next episode to come out.
Oh my god, it's so.
And
good.
I don't normally get like that with a show. I was like when it first came out, I'm like, oh, this is week to week. I can't binge watch this. Okay. And then the way it ended and got canceled, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was excited for season 3, and then I get to, I saw it online that it had been canceled. I'm like, come on, Stephen Amell, find it a new home, please. Just, wrap it up. Give me a season 3.
Right.
So it was, if you haven't watched it, it's definitely,
it's worth the watch.
I know we've thrown some spoilers out there, but, you'll see what we're talking about when you get to the end of season 2 and you're like, oh, but, no, I think it's a great depiction of what the smaller territories go through now, with your big, worldwide promotions that they didn't have to go through when like you and I were coming up and all the promotions were, thriving. Every state, had its own promotion and they thrived, and the guys came in and out. It's where they learned how to work, their gimmick in front of a crowd, see what worked, see what didn't. And they don't really have that anymore. The guys and girls, you got NXT and, they're basically learning how to work the hard camera in NXT. They're not really seeing what gets over with the crowd. And, so Heels is showing, that there's still ways to do it, but it's a struggle.
Right. Connor, what about you? What's a show that you just thoroughly enjoy and you hope they can do more of, or just bring back like a show like Heels?
Bring back Heels. I think Stephen Amell's the head actor, and he was on the CW with Arrow for a while, and he's really good friends with what's his name?
Cody.
Yeah, Cody and the Mark Guggenheim and Greg Berlanti. Which they are having NXT and NWA on the CW, and they've canceled all their shows basically. So maybe they revived it into a TV show, and if not that, maybe Netflix or I don't know. There's gonna be someone that could pick it up because I feel like that they would. Netflix has got WWE coming. CM Punk was in it, so
maybe.
Cody Rhodes. Might as well. Like that would be a good project for WWE, but. There's also one documentary, kind of a documentary series, but I like to see them do, but an actual series about the Monday Night Wars and like an actual, like day by day, like if you've seen Draft Day with the NFL, basically like that, but a series, like episodic. Like it just have to go on forever. Like I want to see like someone portray Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon and all these people, and like
Well, the documentary on the Monday Night War was very good.
Yeah, I seen the it was the Monday Night Wars documentary. You can catch it on, you can watch it on Peacock and also on the WWE Network outside the U.S. I really enjoyed anything with
coming to an end at the end of the year.
Yeah, I really would like to see that, or bring back Heels eventually someday.
Yeah, it seems like Heels is going to be the numero uno factor here for everybody's pick. So, Siren, I'll go to you. A TV show that you love that would either want to see continue or brought back.
I want to see a new Tiger Mask. Give me new Tiger Mask. I want a revamped series. I want brand new anime. Give me Tiger Mask. And also Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling from Netflix. But yeah, no, I honestly, I don't know if anybody's watched like the old school Tiger Mask anime. It's actually like really awesome. I know I'm lame. I have toys everywhere. Y'all gonna expect this from me at some point. But yeah, Tiger Mask was super cool. And I was actually really upset with, Starhawk, Captain Starhawk. The only reason that I watched that bloody show, which wound up being freaking awesome, just so you know, don't like it's amazing, watch it. Was because they were like, we have anime versions of Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes in this show. And I was like, oh my god, Kenny Omega in anime? That's like my dream right there. And it's like 5 minutes. So they're in it. It's awesome. They're animated super well. It looks badass, but they're only in a couple episodes. More Tiger Mask!
So Siren wants more Tiger Mask anime. So that's, I mean, hey, if you're an anime fan out there, you'd probably want the same.
Well, Tiger Mask is based off an actual wrestler. He's Tiger Mask.
Absolutely. I know Tiger Mask. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it's like it's a whole thing. It's absolutely amazing. In my opinion, I feel like this is what like true blue WWE fans believe that the universe is like. So if you've ever watched Tiger Mask, it is literally the world is based on like fighting hierarchy and like the strongest people are going to be like, and the most famous people are going to be your wrestlers, and it's like actual battles, and so when they talk about like the WWE universe, I view it as like this gigantic comic book universe that like that's why they can take characters and change them into other people and nobody like cares or anything, because it's just like a completely different person. It's a completely different universe. So why they can have such crazy gimmicks and it all works. It's a giant comic book. Tiger Mask is essentially the same thing, but in anime, in my opinion.
Now, Brandon, you wanted to, you had something to say.
No, I was going to say, I didn't, besides that, is there a show that I'm missing out there that's, maybe similar to Heels that I just don't remember? Because everything else, everything else that I see is, the documentaries and stuff they put out. Heels is the first real show that I've ever seen that, was, actors portraying a professional wrestler. And, as far as the business goes, I mean, of course you had Hulk Hogan and whatever that damn movie was that he did. What's that?
Well,
Rockin' Wrestling.
No, that was the cartoon. Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. You
could say what Siren said with Glow. Glow was another Netflix show that was basically portraying the first women's wrestling promotion.
I watched the original way back in the day.
Right, and that's kind of
like Glow is the story of Glow.
Glow,
Tina Ferrari went on to become Ivory.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, there is one other one. I don't know if you would consider it like Heels, but Young Rock.
That was really good, actually.
Yeah,
see, I never watched it, but go ahead, Brandon.
Was good. I mean, I didn't watch Young Rock. I saw a couple of episodes here and there, and I try not to watch. I try not to get too invested on things on TV that I can't go back and watch, because he's asked me several times, "Hey, you think you can come on tonight?" There's been a few things I've been trying to do, but the weather here has been bad, and internet was spotty at best with all the snow on the ground and everything. And now we're at 70 degrees today, so my schedule stays pretty full, and it's just I really try not to get too invested in something that I need to sit down Wednesday at 8 o'clock and watch this, or, not taking a shot at AEW. It's not what I was doing to that. Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, I need to no, I try my best to remember to set the DVR on stuff and go back and watch it when I get a chance. Young Rock, I saw probably 2 or 3 episodes and I enjoyed it. I kind of got a giggle out of some of the guys portraying some of the old school characters when, his daddy was back in the back. So that might be something I go back and check out.
Yeah, I think that's one that I'd probably have to go and check out because I've never watched Young Rock. For me, it's more so like Glow. I love the show Glow. It was so much fun to watch. And it was also fun to go back and watch old episodes of actual Glow and seeing the documentary on the launch of Glow and learning about Mando Guerrero being the trainer for them and how Matt Simber and all those guys came together with the idea,
Did you watch it? Did you watch it back in the day when it came on originally years ago?
So I was born in 87, so I kind of missed the tail end of it when it was on its peak. And it kind of, by the time I was because it kind of was canceled in 1990, correct?
Oh, that's the year I was born.
So I was about 3-4 years old when it was canceled. So I never got to experience it, even though I would have loved to. That's why I love going back, watching that documentary and watching the show, because it does make me enjoy that there was a promotion like that, because that's pretty much stems from now where you see WOW, Women of Wrestling. Yeah. So WOW is now the stem from Glow. And so I feel like that's also a great show. Heels, I need to watch. I think I'm halfway through season 1. I got to go back and rewatch because it's been a while. But for me, it's docuseries on TV that I love. I love docuseries. That's why I enjoy Dark Side of the Ring. And actually, one show I love watching on Netflix, which I hope they have another season, is Wrestlers, which is the one based on OVW.
Yep.
When I watched that first season, I was like, dude, they've got to bring this back. I want to watch another season. And I was actually about to watch, I was watching a little bit live OVW Rise before coming on tonight because they were live streaming it on Facebook. So
that was one thing
YouTube. I was watching it on YouTube. And so I was going to watch it. Give me a second. The dog's barking.
No worries. As a dog mom, I totally get it.
So those are kind of stuff that I enjoy. But
I enjoyed the OVW stuff. But one of the things I really liked about it was Netflix giving them the platform to possibly get more eyes on their product in general, and maybe some more pay-per-view eyes. But you go back to the original Glow. I was that demon child that hated all the good guys, so I despised Hulk Hogan in the 80s, and so Tina Ferrari being their version of Hulk Hogan or their big hero. No, I was the Hollywood and Vine person. I love me some Hollywood and Vine back in the day. If you're watching Glow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Siren, you want to kind of tail off of that? Of what you look like you want to say something?
No, I just think that's super awesome because I was the person too. Like I was the epitome of everybody loves the bad guy. I still am, actually, and I just think it's because I don't know. For me, their stories are always so much more compelling. The bad guy story is always so much more compelling, and at the end of the day, we're all just like one opinion away from being the bad guy. Like all it takes is that one time to choose to react to something in a not so nice way that would get you now you're a bad guy, right? So like I've always been a huge fan of them as well, Brandon. So I'm glad I'm not the only one who is like a big fan of the heels. I love the heels.
The original Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, sidebar, but when they had turned heel and they were feuding with Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, we come out of the Fieldale Collinsville High School gym one night, and they're standing there and me being a kid, I'll go walking up and I'm like, can I have your autograph? And they got 4 knives sticking one in each tire. And Jerry Briscoe I look back, he was comical because my mom was like, Jason, come here. They're busy. And Jerry Briscoe looks at her and goes, I don't mind. It's not like we're going anywhere right now. And, but it's the little things you remember. And I think that's kind of what I miss is that because the lines are so blurred down, it's like nobody's really good. Nobody's really bad. Everybody seems to be an asshole. And
that's the best part about it. That's the best part about blurring the lines between heel and face.
I agree with you. I just miss the old days when you had somebody to actually sit there and, your white meat baby face, such as your Hulk Hogan, and somebody just, Kamala comes to the ring and destroys it, and I'm screaming for the Ugandan giant, kill him, kill him, kill him.
Get him! Yeah.
But that's my favorite is the heels. I always love heel wrestlers. I think that's why I only got through half with heels, but then something happened, I couldn't catch up. So now I have to go back, rewatch the whole thing because I want to start from the beginning so I'm refreshed. I do that a lot with the shows, So, but yeah, no, I think with streaming now too is. For you guys, do you think with streaming now, WWE about to stream in 2025 on Netflix, do you think that kind of damages any plans for pro wrestling shows on Netflix that would compete with WWE?
No, I think you'll see them do projects together.
I would hope that would be the case.
I think you're going to see a lot more. They kind of got out of the movie business here for a little bit. I know there's a new Marine coming out, like Marine 265 is about to drop with Miz and Shawn Michaels. But I think you'll see more projects put them together. And I will give the WWE this. You have a lot of detractors, but right, wrong, or indifferent, they've always been ahead of the curve. And out there is this global juggernaut that seems to know things that are going to happen before they happen. The NFL played around with it a little bit this year by putting a couple of games strictly on Peacock, and the fans were going, "Oh my God, I'm not paying extra to see an NFL game." Yeah, you did. And but I think at the end of the day that you're going to see a lot more stuff going this way. And if it's not this deal for AEW, I think their next TV deal, you will see a lot of streaming happen as well, because more and more people are starting to pull the plug, as they say, and you're going to see more and more of this. And the WWE is just out in front of it like they are normal things.
Yeah, no, I like that idea that of WWE finally working together with somebody, like especially with a streaming service where, hey, it's like that talk of the forbidden door. It's like we saw with Mickie James coming back at the Rumble last year, I believe, as Impact Women's champion. So it's like it's possible that WWE could work with other promotions. It's just, do they want to? Will their higher board allow that? But I always love the idea that now that I'm reading about Netflix getting WWE, that's what worried about me. I'm like, well, I don't want wrestlers to be canceled then because they're not willing to work together with Netflix to be like, hey, WWE's or TKO could be like, don't put wrestlers on there because that kind of damages our product. You know what I'm saying? Connor, what about you? Do you see it as a good cohesive with Netflix and WWE?
Yeah. No, they're coming. WWE is going to be on there in 2025. Raw's going there. So I really hope that a series like Wrestlers continues. It could. That's one of the one things you got to worry about. So is it just Raw going to Netflix, or is Peacock still going to have?
For right now, I will tell you, they start in 2025. The Peacock deal is up in the beginning of 2026, and they still have from what I'm reading, SmackDown, of course, is going back to USA, and they still have a very good relationship with NBC Universal. But I do see all the stuff moving from NBC Universal and Peacock over to Netflix in 2026 when the new deal is coming up, because you're talking about the WWE network overseas. When Netflix takes over Raw and all their streaming capabilities, all that stuff is going away and it's going to Netflix everywhere else but here. And I think that's just going to be, they're going to roll it all into one big gigantic ball.
They really should. I mean, that would be more convenient.
I know NXT is going to the CW and SmackDown will be on USA,
and then you'll be able to see the replays after they've aired on those respective networks on Netflix.
Yeah, I would think
which is nice. Yeah.
Will I not be able to watch Raw live, or will it be live on Netflix?
It's supposed to be live, so I'm waiting to see if they're going to make that, because Hulu's all had live TV for a while, and Netflix has not done it yet. So I'll be interested to see if they put something out live before they actually start streaming Monday Night Raw live. And there's talk it might not be Monday Night Raw anymore. It might just be Raw. It might be a different night.
And that's a nice thing. That's a weird thing about they have that freedom to wanting to change nights of where they can, I believe I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Bully Ray or Mark Henry. Someone said on Busted Open that it's smart because now AEW could play with their schedule as well. And now
Very
that
true.
WWE will go to Netflix because they can move Raw any night they want to streaming on Netflix, because Max does the same thing. Max now does live streaming of sports on their network, on their streaming service. That's what's so great about streaming service, and that's why it gives me hope going into 2024. I'm hoping this year, maybe even going into 2025, that WBD and that AEW deal goes down to get a streaming service for AEW, so you can stream those pay-per-views on
And
Warner
I'll tell you
Brothers.
another thing with this Netflix deal going through. I've been saying they needed one for a while, but I would love to see them put together a 2-hour all women's show. The women's roster is loaded, and you could very easily fill up 2 hours with the amount of female superstars they have.
I would not mind that. I would watch that.
And thank you. Go ahead, Connor.
For WWE or
WWE, yes.
Yeah, that would be.
And a good segue for this, because we covered all the things we want, so we're going to finish up here with the last topic that has to do with females, and it goes back to our good old greaseball, Mr. Vince McMahon. If a lot of people don't know, news came out today that a new lawsuit was filed against Vince McMahon for SH and possibly ST. I'm trying to be wholesome on YouTube, but if you want me to describe it flat out, I don't want to get flagged by YouTube, but it's sexual harassment and sex trafficking is what he was filed a lawsuit with. Including in that lawsuit, it was John Laurinaitis, and surprisingly, a new report came out that a wrestler was involved in that, and it was Brock Lesnar.
That's what I'm waiting to see, because Vince McMahon, he's Vince McMahon. He's been a scumbag for years, and we know it. Great businessman, not a great human being.
I did literally the best career path for psychopaths is CEO.
And but Brock Lesnar has always come across. I mean, you see him very active with his children. He doesn't really have anything to do with anybody outside of his household. They say he don't even have a phone in his house, and he won't turn his cell phone on until he leaves his house to go to do an event. So that one I'm waiting. That one kind of caught me off guard. So I'm waiting to get more reports, because like I said, John Laurinaitis, Vince McMahon. That's they've said how much John Laurinaitis just did anything Vince asked him to do over the years to keep his job, and so that doesn't shock me at all. And
no,
but Brock Lesnar, I'm waiting to see, because I'm hoping that's just his name got drug into it by something not dealing with it. Just somehow his name just got dropped in there for no reason. But if he's guilty of it too, then his ass needs to go too. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's my and moving on. And like I said, I'm getting everyone's take. So Connor, moving on to you. Where's the outcome you see on this situation? This is not the first lawsuit that Vince McMahon has had to deal with. Obviously, he stepped away from CEO and then came back for that the merger. But do you think this is the last straw? Do you think TKO is saying we're done with it?
I think if they're smart, they will.
Mm-hmm.
The company's striving without Vince. It seems that the locker room is more happy since Triple H has taken over creative. I saw one report saying that everyone's happy that Vince is not there. They really, if they don't want their company, because TKO has only been around for a few months, right? Like, they're a newly company that acquired WWE and UFC. If they don't want a bad image, personally, I would probably. But he's just on the board, so and even when the TKO people said that the stock dropped because of Vince, like, they just flat out said that.
After it skyrocketed yesterday with the Netflix announcement.
Yeah.
Which is an unfortunate way to follow that up. Oh!
But personally, I would hope that they part ways with Vince, and then anyone else that if it was Brock Lesnar was in that, then so long. I know he only has like a year on his contract. Like, he signed a 1-year extension last year, so it's not like he's going to be around too much longer, anyways. But I would hope that that they would get to the bottom of that and it wouldn't happen again, because apparently this has been going on for years and years and years and years.
And to piggyback on that, real quick, I was listening to Eric Bischoff's podcast. It's probably been a couple months back, but when they were talking about the merger and everything, and Stephanie stepping away for the second time, and you never hear anything bad about Triple H and Stephanie. Everybody seems to always have positive things to say about them. And Bischoff's response was he was very surprised that she stepped away. And Conrad Thompson was like, "Really? You really surprised she stepped away?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Dude, they were going to go through with him trying to make a sale. They were going to go through everything. Everything had to be gone through, record after record after record. And that's her father, And he said, but he goes, "It's Vince. I just assumed everybody knew." He goes, "She probably did, but that's still her father. And reading what her father has done to her mother, she didn't want to be a part of it because she was going to have to be there and be part of the decision-making team of what he could and couldn't do." And he goes, "It doesn't surprise me one bit she stepped back." And, until I listened to that back and forth between the two of them, I hadn't even, that perspective had never crossed my mind of, Stephanie having to sit there and look at all the sexual escapades that her father did. And it's just like, oh, that makes sense now.
There's a difference between knowing and having it slap you in the face,
And that's my question to you, Siren. What is this now? I mean, she had to have knowledge of the previous hush money Vince was doing. Like, how does this now build that her relationship, Vince and Steph? I mean, how does that, is it now damaged like his marriage to Linda?
I personally, as somebody who has dealt with I have a very, very, very rocky relationship with my family, and it is because of a lot of really crazy things. Pardon me. I truly do believe that in order to protect yourself, and this goes to anybody out there who has a member in their family who may be a Vince, okay? To protect yourself and your well-being, putting healthy boundaries in place is super important. All right. If you don't want to deal with what they're doing and their destructive behavior and the toxic behaviors that they are putting out there, then do not. You never have to put yourself in a situation that makes you feel uncomfortable. You never have to support somebody just because they're your family. If they've done something wrong and you believe that it is wrong, you don't have to deal with them. They don't have to be in your life anymore. That's not something, it's family is not the be all end all just because you are born to that person or into that person's life. If you don't feel comfortable and they're doing bad things and you put your boundaries in place and they push past them, get out, walk away. And I do believe that her stepping away in that situation is probably one of the only things that may salvage her relationship with that man, if it is salvageable at all. Because I myself, as a woman, would not be able to look at my father, the person that I looked at for you are the image of a man that I'm supposed to, this is what I'm supposed to find and what I want to have in my life when I am older, and I wouldn't want to see all that. I don't know if I would be able to repair that relationship if those accusations and those things are true as a woman. But I mean, everybody's different. But I do think that not having to read every little detail and every little sordid bit of information would probably be the only thing that would save my relationship with that man if he was my father. I just, boundaries are important, and if people are bad, people are bad. You don't have to have them in your life.
No, I completely agree. But one thing that that's a weird dynamic with that family entirely.
Mm-hmm.
You take this stuff out of the equation. You've seen snippets here and there. Maybe her and Triple H had some issues or whatever, but for the most part, that seemed to be simply rumors. They've always seemed to be a pretty strong unit. And when Triple H stepped away with his health issues, which again, he could be, he might not be what he's been portrayed. I mean, he could be an asshole in the back too, but everybody seems to like him. And when he stepped away with his health issues, that's not only her husband, but the father of her children. And Vince just went in and tore down and stepped on everything Triple H had built. NXT was a powerhouse when Triple H was running it. And then, Vince went in and turned the NXT 2.0 into a clown show and let a lot of those guys go.
I would not have had a relationship with him.
And then, on top of that, then you got Shane. And I don't know what the dynamic is there because, there was a report that came out when they merged that Shane asked, TKO, told him he'd like to work with the company and have a position in the company. And it was reported that Triple H went to him with, he didn't say him or me or anything like that. He said, you're welcome to hire him if you'd like, but if you do, please find my replacement. I do not want to work with him. So there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye that probably we may never know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
healthy boundaries are important.
Yeah, it's a big family issue, and like Siren said, it does come with that whole healthy boundaries and just the view you have on family.
Mm-hmm.
I strive to try to be the best family person as I can. Do I have a great relationship with my whole family? Not my whole family, but I still love them. I still, whether we fight or not, I still love them, which is very hard in a situation that the McMahons are in right now, with this new allegation. And the one thing I fear for right now is that I fear for the girl with the allegations, because it's always media and the fandom and the tribalism that attacks the victim, and which is not right. I think everybody in this situation is in a bad position, more so Vince, because again, this is his third allegation, and it's just at that point where, like Connor said, you need to cut ties with the man. He came back for one reason, that was to make money on the merger. I think he's got enough to where they can be like, look, Vince, we're done with you. We'll cut you out.
From what I heard too, that when they put him in that position, that kind of ironic that him and CM Punk have a kind of a similar clause in their contract. It was a behavioral clause.
Right.
So, if that's true and he's got it in his contract,
that's grounds for termination.
That is. That's hit the bricks, Jack.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a contract. That's why I feel like wrestlers get the stiff end of a contract. I was just watching a documentary today called 350 Days. It was a wrestling documentary. It was on Tubi TV, so it's free. It just has ads. Tubi. But it had Tito Santana, it had Bret Hart, Wendy Richter on it. It had George Animal Steel, and they were talking about how, especially Bret talked about the early days where they traveled and they were treated like animals. Their contracts weren't shit, beg my pardon, and they were fend for themselves, where they wouldn't even see their families. They'd be gone 350 days of the year, and they'd have to try to make shows. And someone mentioned people be at home after the show. Those people we put the show on for, they'd be in bed by 10. We'd still be driving to the next town. And just to try to get a little shut eye, we couldn't do it because we had to fly to the airport, and then they'd screw up, and it's nightmare, So it's at the same time with the contracts for CEOs like Vince, and that behavioral kind of thing for grounds of termination, WWE wrestlers today have that you can't compete for 90 days. I think right now, Vince, even though he is kind of, I don't want to call him the godfather, but kind of the main reason why pro wrestling has changed the landscape when he kind of did what he did back when he bought the company from his dad, is you kind of have to cut ties with him and kind of Pete Rose him and blackball him from the pro wrestling world. Pete Rose, for those who don't know, is a baseball player who's been blackballed from the Hall of Fame and just baseball in general because he gambled on baseball games, mainly while he was still playing for the Reds. So that's just my take on it. We'll go one more roundtable on this, and then we'll finish up. Brandon, final words on this topic.
Well, my thing with Vince, like my two sons, they're diehard AEW fans. It's AEW this. I mean, my oldest became a Jaguar fan because of AEW and the con. And I tried to explain the difference in the two to him this way with we'll just use CM Punk as an example. And because I told him, you like Vince McMahon? I said, I never said that. I said Vince was a better businessman, but he's a shitty human being. I said, take CM Punk, for example. I said, now, during that press conference when CM Punk was airing all his grievances, I said, Vince might have fired him right there on the press conference. I said, but if he didn't fire him at the press conference, he'd have fired him backstage as soon as he got back there. I said, Tony wants to hug it out. I said, Tony seems like the type of guy you could go have a beer with and, enjoy yourself, have a good conversation, where Vince, you just want to get the hell away from him as quick as you can. But as far as the success of the WWE and where AEW showing its struggles, and a lot of it comes from my perspective of reading certain things and different stories. I never take a story to heart unless I see it in like 5 or 6 different places. And then it's like, okay, there might be something here. And it seems like all of Tony's struggles is because he is a fan and he wants to be friends with all the guys in the back. Where, right, wrong, or indifferent, like you said, they were treated like animals and kind of like a circus animal. And Vince made his billions and moved on. And now we're here with the TKO being a juggernaut with, the UFC and the WWE. But the bad people eventually get caught. And I know he's in his 70s, but I mean, if he's guilty of what they've accused him of, I hope he spends his last days behind bars. And that's the last we got to hear of it.
Absolutely. Connor, your final thoughts on this topic?
I hope that decision's made pretty soon. Hopefully before the Royal Rumble. I know it's coming up this weekend, but I don't think a decision like that should take that much. I mean, that's a lot of stuff in one day. Like, that's pretty tough to go through all that and read all that, the stuff that was out today. And I hope that Triple H, I think that he could do a better job. Everyone seems to be more happy that he's not in charge, but creative-wise, he's in charge. And Vince, like, they're more happy with Triple H around than Vince was. I think it's time to part ways with Vince. He did create the WWE and all that, but WWE's already been created. They're thriving right now. I think it's best to part ways. And like Brandon said, if it's need be, personally I agree. He probably should be locked up the rest of his life. I hate to say that, but
I mean,
that's just a brutally honest truth. I hope that they get to the bottom of it and move past this. Hopefully, and hopefully this never happens again.
Right, and Siren, your final take on this topic.
You cannot take away any of that man's accomplishments. You cannot take away the things that he has done for the sport. You cannot take any of that away. But at the end of the day, if any even tiny bit of any of that was true, then yeah, definite jail time. I mean, we all, as everybody's mentioned, we all knew that he was not a good person. And as I mentioned, like, it's actually, statistically speaking, most CEOs and people who run like massive companies have like it's a psychopath's career. And the reason for that is because there is no emotional attachment to your workforce. They're treated like animals because they're there to perform like animals. CEOs can fire thousands of people the day before Christmas and not give a damn. And it's a great quality to have when you're trying to run a business, because you can't worry about everybody. You have to worry about the business. And sometimes those hard decisions are going to screw a lot of people over at the end of the day. But none of those hard decisions should ever involve what he's being accused of. Firing people and maybe ending somebody's career before they think it should be done is a sad decision that you have to make in the industry. But what he's being accused of, I mean, it's completely outside any purview. Like,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think my final take on this is evidence needs to be presented to a court. They need to do it the justice way. We could read the dirt sheets all day and hear these accusations. We know the character of Vince McMahon as a businessman. Yeah, he has to make decisions, part of the business. But when it comes to abuse of power that Vince has been known for and taken advantage of people, particularly females in the industry, that's where you cross the line between being a businessman and an evil person.
A monster.
And so I think when it comes down to when it goes to court, I do hope justice does serve. And if these accusations do come and are true, I hope everyone involved that had done these actions are given the full extent of the law and the acceptable punishment, again, jail time, and never actually step foot in professional wrestling ever again, if that's it, because that's just too much.
Yep. I'll say this too. If you go back, if you want to look at his character and business practices, it's probably the main reason he won the Monday Night Wars. When Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left, they both have been publicly stated for years that they didn't want to leave because they had been down south before. They knew what kind of organization it was, but they went to him and said, "Hey, this is what we're getting offered for X amount of dates. Can you match it? We don't want to go." And he just said, "Nope, bye, next man up." And he just kept the machine rolling.
Yeah.
And then if you've ever listened to Vince Russo, God help you if you do. But one of the things that he, like him or not, he's another one that comes across as a diehard family man. And he said when he decided to leave the WWE was a conversation he had with Vince about saying, "Hey, I need to spend more time with my family. I can't be writing 2 shows. Find somebody else to write SmackDown. I'll stick with Raw." And he said Vince's exact response to him was, "I pay you X amount of dollars a year. You can afford a nanny. Do your work." And he said he knew right then and there that he could no longer work for that man. And that's when he left and went to WCW. And so again, it goes back to what we've been talking about is the business side. You see where it's got him and you see where they are now, but human being wise, no, there's a special place in hell for you, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are demons deep down in his soul that he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life after this whole situation happens.
I'll tell you what, on a personal note, though, I don't care how old somebody is that I run across, whether it's in a McDonald's or a Wawa, wherever I go. And this, not patting myself on the back, but I'm always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And I've got 2 daughters. One, my youngest daughter passed away in a car wreck back in 2022, but I still have one here. And being, having Stephanie, having kids, period, but having a daughter and being accused of treating a female like that, there's something wrong with you, man. Especially when your daughter worked for you, underneath you, watching that shit for 25 years. I mean, so yeah, there's
right. And I think we can all tangent. Yeah, I think we can all agree with you on that one. Well, fortunately, ending on a somber note on this because of the situation, but we do thank you guys for all watching, listening, following us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Twitch. We do enjoy you guys' comments. We do enjoy you guys' views and everything like that. I do want to thank everybody for being on here. Mr. Brandon, thank you for joining us. Connor, always pleasure having you on. One of our favorite producers. Siren, always fun having you on as a guest from our North show from Canada. So we do appreciate that. Make sure, again, you guys hit like, subscribe, share with your friends. We are on Talking Elite every Thursday night. Make sure you join us on Friday, tomorrow night, for a live Rampage reaction. Saturdays, we do our live Collision reactions. Every Wednesday, we also do our live Dynamite reactions. We also have a new channel, which is AEZ Gaming, where we have AEW's Fight Forever. That's where we have matches on the show with the game, and we have commentary going over the matches. It's a really fun show. Make sure you guys catch on with that. Always join us on Saturdays for AEZ Canada. We always have good talks there. Siren always has good insights there as well. And again, we have interviews with pro wrestlers. If you haven't saw it yet, we just had an interview with the Blue Meanie from ECW. I gave a lot of good information, told a lot of great stories. But we're very excited for this year. I think we have a lot planned for interviews. Connor, is there any other news that I might have missed that I need to share with everybody?
I
try to cover every basis, the games, Canada.
Basically covered everything. It seems like. I will say this Saturday we will not be doing a Collision reaction, but we will be doing a Royal Rumble reaction on our a sister channel that I created, Why Brother Wrestling Podcast. You have to check that out. You can check that out. We'll be doing a Royal Rumble reaction. I also want to share this last comment. That was really.
Oh,
that is awesome, Mike. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
See, and that just goes to show someone like Triple H that actually is like, hey, yeah, no, I'm a good person. Like, honestly, I would like to see Triple H as a CEO of something because he seems like a nice guy. But, that's really cool. So But yeah, no, thank you guys for the comment, Mike. That's awesome story that your brother got to meet Triple H. And yeah, like Connor said, live reaction to the Royal Rumble. If you shoot me the link, I'll jump on that because I'll probably watch the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I want to see what happens.
I'm definitely going to watch it. I think today's news, the only thing today's news would have done for the Royal Rumble is you will not see the return of Brock Lesnar. So
no, not at all. But yeah, no. So we'll all be reacting to that hopefully on Saturday. And again, we got interviews coming up this year. I know Connor mentioned before that a big one's happening. We're very excited about it. We're not going to share a lot of information, but it's a big one. So if there's nothing else, we thank you guys for joining us here on Talking Elite. And if there's nothing else, as always, good night, everybody.
good night.